She stood behind the caution tape like a self-appointed warden, heels in the dirt, clipboard raised like a badge. Her eyes locked on me as I unloaded fencing gear off my flatbed. No smile, no greeting, just a cold demand. This land doesn't belong to you, and I'm placing a call to the sheriff. I didn't flinch, didn't explain myself, didn't bother pointing at the deed in the glove box. I just kept working, post by post, wire by wire, while she dialed, convinced she was about to catch a criminal. But what she didn't know was that I've stood on more dangerous ground than this, and when that sheriff pulled up, stepped out of his cruiser, and spotted me, he didn't ask for my ID. He stood straighter, took off his hat, and saluted. Her voice caught mid-sentence. That's when it hit her. She hadn't called the law on me. She'd called the law to me. I arrived just before first light. The kind of morning where the fog settles in your lungs before the coffee does. 40 acres of rugged soil, an old barn frame, and a dry well that hadn't run since '89. It wasn't paradise. But it was paid for. And after 22 years of service, I'd take solitude over ceremony any day. There was no grand welcome, no moving van, just me, my truck, a generator, and 3 months of supplies to rebuild what time had left behind. I was exactly where I wanted to be. Until she showed up. Day 2. First contact. The sound of tires crunching gravel made the hairs on my neck rise. I stepped out from the tool shed I was repairing and saw a white Lexus nosing up to my property line, the kind of car that's always spotless, even in dust country. She stepped out like she was inspecting a crime scene. Khaki slacks, crisp blouse, oversized sunglasses. One hand on her hip, the other already reaching for her clipboard. "This area falls under the visual oversight of Oak Hollow Estates," she announced. "Without so much as a, hello. What's your name and who authorized this structure?" I looked behind me at the pile of fence posts and the half-built tool shed, then back at her. "You lost?" She didn't laugh. "You're within 50 feet of our community perimeter. That gives our HOA jurisdiction over all visible structures and land use infractions. I'll need to document everything before we proceed." "Proceed with what?" I asked, resting one hand on the tailgate of my truck. "Compliance action," she said, "assuming you're even supposed to be here." Then she took out her phone and started recording. Day 3. The first threat. The next morning, I found a folded letter tucked under the windshield wiper of my truck. No envelope, no stamp, no official signature. Just a typed notice from the Oak Hollow Estates Homeowners Committee demanding that I cease all unauthorized occupation of undeveloped parcels adjacent to residential lines. Attached was a blurry photo of me from the day before, holding a post digger. At the bottom, in red ink, "Final warning before county escalation." I didn't reply, didn't respond, but I did make a copy. And then I installed trail cams. Day 4. Surveillance. By sunrise, I had footage. She returned with 2 others, one in a golf cart, one in a hybrid SUV. They never crossed onto my land. They stayed just outside the barbed wire and whispered, gesturing toward my truck, my shed, and my small generator setup. One of them pointed at my flag, a small, weather-worn military banner I'd hung from the side of the barn. Karen, that's what I'd started calling her by now, took a photo and made a call. I watched it all from the hillside. And I knew what was coming. The sheriff's department rolled in around 7:15 a.m. 2 units. Not rushed, not hostile, just slow and deliberate. I was tightening the western fence line when they pulled up. Deputy Collins was first out. Young, professional. He held a clipboard but didn't look up from it when he spoke. "Morning. We received a complaint from the Oak Hollow HOA regarding a suspected squatter and unauthorized construction activity. I took a breath. You need ID? I asked calmly. He nodded. Property ownership, if you got it. I walked to the truck, opened the glove box, and handed him the deed. Notarized, dated, with full GPS plot registration, water and mineral rights intact. I had it ready. I always do. He read it, then read it again, then handed it to his partner. Well, that's not a squatter, the older deputy said flatly. That's an owner. Copy that, Collins said into the radio. No cause here. Fully documented. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The moment before the fall. Karen arrived just as they were turning to leave. Fast. Loud. Phone held out like a weapon. Don't let him leave. He's dangerous. I've filed 3 reports. He's not supposed to be here. Collins raised a hand. Ma'am, we've seen the deed. He owns the land. That's not possible. He doesn't belong here. This is a community. We have rules. She stepped forward. The older deputy didn't move, but his hand shifted slightly, just enough to remind her where the line was. You need to calm down, he said. You're interfering with lawful ownership. That's a line you don't want to cross. Then I want your supervisor, the sheriff. Call him. 20 minutes later. Recognition, Sheriff Bill Granger arrived in a dust-covered Suburban. Boots first, sunglasses second. No urgency, just presence. He stepped out, scanned the scene, then saw me. He paused. Then he removed his hat. I'll be damned, Sergeant. Didn't know you were coming back through this way. Karen stopped breathing. The deputies straightened. Ma'am, the sheriff said slowly, this man isn't trespassing. He's not just a landowner. He's a decorated veteran and a friend of this department. I suggest you leave before you become the problem we have to deal with. Karen left without another word. But I knew it wasn't over. Because when someone like her gets embarrassed, they don't stop. They just get quieter, more careful, and a whole lot more dangerous. For about 3 days after the sheriff's visit, it was quiet. Too quiet. No Lexus, no notes, no late-night visitors at the fence line. I spent the time clearing out the old root cellar and rewiring the barn's solar junction. The land was finally starting to feel like mine, but I've spent enough time in hostile territory to know something most people don't. Silence isn't peace. It's patience with an agenda. The letter that changed everything, day 9. Mail delivery. Among the usual forms and flyers was a thin envelope from the County Environmental Compliance Office. No HOA logo, no Karen's name, just an official seal, a case number, and a warning. Notice of immediate review. Suspected land use violation. Unauthorized excavation, potential contamination risk, and violation of rural zoning limits. I read it twice. Then again, there was no excavation, no contamination, just me, my generator, and a dry patch of soil nobody cared about until I moved in. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a tactic. Karen hadn't just lost face. She'd gone underground. And now she was trying to bury me in paper. I made some calls. The county clerk confirmed. A citizen complaint had been submitted anonymously, with photos. Allegations of improper waste disposal and illegal grading. It came from a concerned resident of Oak Hollow. The inspector was due in 4 days. If violations were confirmed, I could be fined. Or worse, my land could be labeled in non-compliance, restricting any future development. I knew what this was. She couldn't kick me out legally, so she was trying to make the land itself untouchable. I prepared quietly. While she plotted from her HOA board seat, I adjusted course. I photographed everything. Fuel cans capped, generator placed on a spill mat, trash sealed and stored in military-grade barrels, no digging beyond regulation depth, no septic, no water redirection, no illegal drainage. Then I called an old friend, a retired EPA compliance officer, and asked him to walk the property with me. He laughed when he arrived. "She really filed this? Against you? This place is cleaner than most state parks." We documented everything, logged timestamps. Even took drone footage from above. If they wanted a fight on paper, I'd give them a file thick enough to break their clipboard. Inspection day. The inspector showed up at 8:45 a.m. Late 30s, clip-on sunglasses. Wore his badge on a lanyard like he didn't want it touching his shirt. Behind him, Karen, in the passenger seat of a white Toyota marked HOA Oversight Committee Liaison. Not county, not legal, just invited. I didn't say a word to her. Didn't need to. Instead, I let the inspector do his job. He walked, measured, asked a few polite questions, then paused at the generator and looked back at Karen. "Is this what you meant by open fuel dumping zone?" She didn't answer. He took a few photos, flipped the page on his clipboard, and moved on. 20 minutes later, he closed his folder. "I see no violations," he said. 0. Karen's face? Frozen. "So there's no penalty?" she asked. He nodded. "Correct. In fact, it looks like the owner's exceeding compliance standards." I watched her breathe in, and then clench her jaw as the oxygen turned bitter in her mouth. That should have been the end. But Karen? She doesn't stop when the law says no. She just finds new ways to bend it. And 3 days later, I found out what she'd done next. A permit block had been placed on my address, which meant I couldn't move forward on anything. No plumbing, no outbuildings, no fencing upgrades, not even mailbox relocation. She'd filed a community impact appeal, a process no one outside city planning even knows exists, freezing all development until an HOA dispute arbitration panel could review my case. She'd forced a state-level delay using a local HOA, all without ever stepping onto my land. Because now, it was my turn. I wasn't going to fight her in meetings, not in paperwork, not even in court. I had something better. Proof. Access. And a story that no HOA wanted the press sniffing around in. She wanted to play bureaucratic games. She forgot who trained the players. I'd played along long enough. She wanted to drag me into the mud of bureaucracy. Fine. But what she didn't count on was that some of us used to live in those bureaucracies. Command them, audit them. And worse, she made this personal. So I started pulling threads, not through angry HOA meetings, not through Facebook groups or neighborhood gossip. I went to the paperwork, where real corruption lives and breathes in margins and signatures. The HOA sent me an official notification claiming my land fell under a newly revised HOA zone called Phase 4 Compliance Perimeter. Here's the problem. That perimeter was never voted on, never approved, and it definitely wasn't recorded with the county land assessor. But right there was a signature from a majority vote. 4 board members, all signed on the same date, same pen, same ink, same slant. A forgery. The right call at the right time. I forwarded copies to a contact I'd helped once, a clerk inside the State Property Oversight Division. She called me back that night. "You didn't hear this from me, but your HOA president is already under review for zoning tampering. And if those docs are what I think they are, they'll fast-track it." She paused, then added, "Also, you're not actually in the HOA. Your parcel is grandfathered outside of Phase 1 through 3. You're exempt." Always have been. I knew it. But now, it was official. Karen set the trap, then fell into it, so I baited the hook. I sent a registered request to the HOA demanding a copy of the vote that included my land into their perimeter. Karen responded herself confidently, "The board reserves the right to revise boundaries in accordance with community needs." She signed it. On record, on false documents, under her title. That was all the state needed. I didn't even have to press the red button. They did it for me. 3 weeks later, the state launched a formal audit of Oak Hollow HOA. Turns out Karen's compliance perimeter wasn't the only fantasy she'd been printing. Multiple board expenses routed through her husband's landscaping firm, $14,700 in unapproved fees charged to homeowners, at least 9 forged signatures on zoning extensions, and a full summer's worth of security patrol payments made to a company. That didn't exist. She was building an empire on lies, fake invoices, and threats. And all it took was one man, with a file folder, the day the letters arrived. That morning, the HOA board received 5 sealed envelopes from the state attorney's regional office. Karen? She was in the middle of a landscaping walkthrough when she opened hers. Her face drained the moment she saw the return address. She didn't finish the inspection, didn't return to the HOA office, didn't even post on Nextdoor that week. It was like watching a tyrant vanish in real time. But I wasn't done. Because justice wasn't just about stopping her. It was about fixing what she broke. With her authority revoked and an interim board installed, I filed a reverse compliance motion to have my land permanently exempted from any future HOA claims. The board, they didn't even contest it. In fact, one of them shook my hand and whispered, "She scared everyone into silence. You ended that." A week later, I got a letter from the county. Parcel number 117B is officially reclassified as private, non-HOA governed, and protected by pre-existing rural residency statutes. No more interference, no more games, no more Karen. But the most satisfying moment wasn't the exemption, or the apology, or even the audit. It was seeing her walk past my land in silence. No clipboard, no comments, just the weight of her own lies following her back to the car. She blocked my road, so I bought hers. Before I got my exemption letter, there was one final nuisance Karen had cooked up. She had the HOA seal off my back road access with a string of gravel truck deliveries, each one dumping fresh loads right at the property line. Her excuse? Safety improvement for community border access. But the community border was my land. And those trucks? They had to cross my boundary line to do it. That made it trespassing, and every stone they left behind, gal dumping. I didn't react then. I waited. Waited until I had everything lined up. Because, see, I wasn't just clearing my name anymore. I was writing a bill. I called up the same drone guy who helped me before. Only this time, we flew low. Shot high-resolution video of every gravel mound, every tire mark, every delivery path cutting into my land. We used timestamps from the HOA's own security newsletter. They proudly documented community upgrades with photos showing exactly when and where each load dropped. We even caught one truck's license plate in 4K. The footage? Immaculate. The proof? Undeniable. The invoice that hit like a lawsuit. With documentation in hand, I worked with a local attorney who specialized in rural property disputes. He grinned when he saw my stack of evidence. You know, technically, this qualifies as commercial dumping on private land. If they didn't have a permit, and they won't, you could bill per load, or sue. We settled on the former. I drafted a commercial invoice to the HOA 7 unauthorized gravel loads, $2,000 per load. Market rate for cleanup, disposal, and land restoration. Drone footage, time-stamped images, and vehicle plate documentation included Shine Day payment deadline, after which legal fees and property damage claims would apply. I sent it certified mail, and CC'd the county sheriff. When the sheriff came back, 4 days later, the sheriff pulled up again. Same guy, same calm walk up the driveway. Except this time, he smiled. "Got your packet," he said. "Looked over everything. You're in the clear. She's not." He paused. "And just so you know, you have every right to pursue damages. If they don't pay voluntarily, we'll help enforce the judgment." Then he did something Karen never expected anyone to do around me. He saluted and left. Karen's final response. Day 13 of the 14-day deadline. The HOA sent me a check. Full amount. No letter. No argument. Just a short note scribbled in blue pen. This matter is considered closed. Oak Hollow. HOA Treasure. Or Karen didn't sign it. She didn't dare. Her name wasn't even on the board anymore. She had resigned voluntarily, according to the HOA's final newsletter of the season, conveniently released the same week 3 state auditors showed up to dig through their books. And that's how it ended. No lawsuit, no shouting match, no social media war, just facts. Receipts. And a calm man who knew that the truth, when documented, hits harder than any tantrum. I still live here. The land's peaceful. The barn's rebuilt, the back roads open. And every once in a while, when I see a white Lexus roll past the edge of town, I smile. Because the HOA tried to bury me in paperwork, but I buried them in proof.